Welcome back to the Gamekeeper's Cottage Diaries. Welcome back to Gamekeeper's Cottage. It's late July and this week we're going to be starting on some of the renovations on the stable block. As you can see from the video here, the roof is in a very bad state. And if we take a look quickly inside with a couple of shots, you'll see just how bad the holes are and the boarding that's basically falling to pieces. I'm going to be totally removing all of the old felt from the top of the roof and also the board underneath, which looks like it's a fairly thin plywood and is falling to bits. And I'm going to be replacing it with some 9mm OSB 3 boards. And then on top of that, instead of a normal felt, I'm going to be using a product called Onduline, which is a corrugated felt roofing solution, which you can see here. The weather's a typical English summer, a bit overcast and there's a few showers, but all the supplies are here and I've got a week off work, so I'm going to have to crack on with it. Okay, bit of a correction to what I said earlier. For the actual roofing, I was going to be using a product called Onduline. That's what I ordered. But what I've actually been sent is Onduline. They're pretty much identical, made by the same company. It's just that Onduline is a fraction of a centimetre thicker and is guaranteed a bit longer and is a higher quality product. So I'm pretty happy. I've got a better product for the money I paid. So, as I say, there's various products around the similar things, Onduline, Onduline, other sort of cheaper versions. We'll be using 3 different products from the Onduline range. Firstly, we've got a fascia tray. This fits over the top of the OSB board at the bottom on the eaves, and it just gives a bit of extra protection to stop the water going up underneath the corrugated roofing onto the boarding. Then we've got the roofing material itself. As I say, this is a corrugated bituminous product. It's about 2 meters long by 95 centimeters wide, but you overlap it, so you actually end up with about an 85 centimeter usable width for each panel. It's guaranteed for about 20 years and should be a lot higher quality than the type of felt that we've got on the roof at the moment. Finally, we've got a set of ridge sheets which will be going on the ridge of the roof, and they bend over and you just nail or screw them into place over the top of the actual roofing sheets. Fixing can be done with either nails or screws. In this case I'm using screws purely for ease and because I don't trust the actual structural roof of the stables. It's very old and I'm frightened about what hammering it will do. So it's just a bit easier to screw stuff in. These screws have a little washer on the top that will give you a watertight connection into the Onduline roofing. Before we start fitting the Onduline roofing, we need to decide how to put on the sheets and how we're going to overlap them. The first thing we need to know is the direction of the prevailing winds. You would then start at the end furthest away from the prevailing wind and work your way across. In our case, the wind comes from the right as we're looking at the stables from the front. So we will be starting on the left end and working our way to the right, overlapping each sheet. After completing the bottom row, you go back to the left and add an additional row if necessary, and finally the ridge sheets are added, again starting from the left and overlapping. As mentioned before, due to access, I'm going to be doing things a bit differently, but we'll still be following the same principle. So I will start at the bottom left sheet, then overlay the sheet above it, and then the ridge piece. Then I will work to the right, starting each column at the bottom and working up. Doing it this way does mean that some of the sheets will need to be slid under each other before they're screwed in, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. As I mentioned earlier, as you lay each Onduline sheet, you have to overlap them as you work your way across and also between each row. Onduline actually provide specifications for how much the overlap should be dependent on the pitch or gradient of your roof, which I'll just quickly stick on the screen here. I measured our roof pitch earlier and it's a 17.5% gradient, which means that I'm going to be overlapping by one ridge like this, and will also be overlapping between rows by 170 millimeters, 17 centimeters. For fixing the sheets to the roof, at the top and the bottom you should screw or nail in every ridge. You always screw into the ridge, not into the valley, because otherwise you're likely to get leaks. And then on intermediate fixings you should do every other ridge. First off, I'm going to have to remove all these old branches and bits of plant from the roof before I can get on with the job proper. Okay, it's a few hours later and I've finally managed to remove all of the brambles and branches and crap that was on top of the roof. It took a lot longer than I thought because it was all entangled. So the next job is to remove the guttering from the front and back of the stables, and also at the right hand end where it goes round. I'm hoping to reuse as much of the old guttering as possible, but there are a few bits that are broken and missing, so I'll probably have to buy a few new pieces just to make up the guttering. Okay, it's the next day. So yesterday I managed to remove all of the old branches and undergrowth off the top of the right hand end of the stables, and I've removed all of the guttering. I've now got a little scaffolding rig set up, and I'm going to crack on with actually removing the felt and the old boards underneath. Let's just have a quick look from up on top just to see exactly how bad things are on the current roof. So as you can see, it's pretty bad at this end, with some of the felt gone right through at the joints and into the board, and more there where it's dipped down, and also at the far end, if you can see on the camera, there are also some very pronounced dips, and it's very similar around the other side. The other side's a lot harder to film, so I'm not going to try filming around there. Okay, it's a few hours later, and as you can see, I've removed all of the old roofing on this side of the stables. I've left the other side for the moment because the weather forecast is not good, so I don't want to leave it open for too long, so I'll take that off in a couple of days' time. One issue I've found is we have a rotten joist, so I've bought a new one of those, and I will replace that before I start doing the roofing. Okay, the first bit of OSB 3 board is in place and screwed in, and I'm now fitting the eaves fascia over the top of it before I start installing the roofing. Right, the first set of boards are in place. As you can see at the bottom, we've got a shorter section, then we've overlapped it, and I've screwed in both at the bottom of the board where they join and where they overlap. Then coming up, I'm still in the process of adding those screws in, and some more screws at the top. There will be one per ridge. As you can see, for the moment I've left the final ridge unscrewed. That is because the next set of sheeting will actually go over the top of that, and we will screw through both of them to hold them in place. I've now also started screwing the ridge piece in on this side. As you can see, I'm screwing it every other ridge on the sheeting, and we will overlap the next sheet on the mark, and then I will screw in this final one just to hold it, to give it extra strength, Off to the other end of this stable now though, to actually get up the ladder and do some of these end screws that I haven't done so far. And here we are, after nearly 5 days of removing all the old roofing, replacing a rotten joist, and then installing the new roof. As you can see from this view of the top of the scaffolding, the new roofing is in place. We had a nice rainstorm last night and the inside of the stables was nice and clean for the first time in years. All that remains is for me to thank you for watching and ask that if you enjoyed the video, please support the channel by liking, subscribing and commenting.